Hey, welcome everyone back to Verdusco Talks Business, the show where we skip the theory and get straight to the execution side of it. I'm your host, Raul Verdusco. Today, I've got a really exciting guest joining us, Andy Saldaña. Hopefully, I said it right. He can correct me. He's the CEO of Den, Denovo Studios. So, go ahead, Andy. Yeah, go right ahead. Introduce yourself. Tell us
Okay,
about yourself and your background, and how did you get to where you are today?
cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Raul. You said it right, so don't beat yourself up too much about that. Like Raul said, my name is Andy Saldaña. I'm the founder and CEO of Denovo Studios. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, so I started my professional career in manufacturing at a company called Greenlee, which is a company based in Rockford, Illinois. Um, and there I worked in engineering, uh, in quality, manufacturing, and design. So I did that for several years, and eventually I got promoted into a continuous improvement leadership role. So there I oversaw, CI initiatives across like all the company's locations here in the U.S. So that was four manufacturing plants and a distribution center here in the U.S. And from there, that's when I made my move to Michigan. I accepted a role as program manager at a tier one supplier in Southfield, Michigan. And there I managed programs for the sixth generation Explorer, the new Bronco, and the Aviator. So, I don't know what cars you drive, Raul, but if you have an Explorer or an Aviator, if you the overhead console, that was part of what the
That
team
was
that I
your
was on.
design.
Not my design. No, no. Actually, I like to play around and tell people like you have that because of me. But I was a small part of it. It was a whole team. But yeah, that was the program that I was managing, as well as the backup camera for the Bronco. So that's the programs that I managed. But yeah, so after that, I eventually left that role and I went full throttle at managing my company.
Nice. Well, I guess Andy, if you don't mind, we kind of back up a little bit. So, out of curiosity, and I always like asking this question to guys. So, what actually drew you into engineering? What drew you into that field?
Um, I think as a kid, I think it always kind of. I feel like all these stories kind of start the same, but like as a kid, I liked to kind of see how things worked. I was always kind of tech savvy as well, um, and I think I decided to do engineering because it kind of fit for the most part, like, things that I felt like fit what I was into. And overall, in hindsight, now looking back, I think it was just mainly I like to problem solve and I still like to do that. That's what we do, as business owners on a daily basis. So I think it was a good decision that I made. And I think that was the main part of it. I think it was just the complexity keeps me um, not bored, not bored. I feel if I'm not problem solving or creating something, I start um, I get bored. And I think that's a lot. It's the same for a lot of people. So I think engineering being probably one of the hardest things you can pursue in college. I think it was a good decision.
Huh. Well, I'll kind of go into my story. For me, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do up until when I was in high school, and they happened to have this place called Skill Center. And so it was kind of a learning day where you go to the different places that they had in there. So you go mechanical shop or nursing or agriculture. They had a bunch of different skill sets you could learn about while you're still in high school. So that way, the idea was when you get into college, you know what you're going to major in. And so for myself, I took electronics class. And remind you, is this is nowhere near where technology is today. So there was I don't remember if there was a smartphone. I remember having a pager, put that way. And and we were there. I just remember the one class, the electronic class, they had this what do you call it? Like a red laser pointer.
Mm,
And so they had a CD player and they plugged it into this area, this little box. It was shooting a laser out.
okay.
And all the way on the other side of the room was like the well, obviously the receiver, and it was speakers connected to it, and it was playing the music from the CD. And then they put a reflector on the wall in the room, and so they shot it against the reflector, and it bounced back into the receiver, and it still kept playing the music from the CD. So I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." Obviously, right now, I guarantee everybody's like, "Whoa," because
What's a
of
CD is what they're
Bluetooth.
asking.
Yeah, probably. So, but yeah, that's what actually got me into it. And I was like, oh, okay, I wouldn't mind doing this. And that's what actually got me into, well, electrical engineering, but yeah, engineering in general.
Nice, man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
So,
think it's a hard thing for like a kid. I'm thinking as a high school kid. Looking back, I'm like, I guess I'm glad it worked out because although I did pick engineering, like you said, I don't think I don't think I was sure. I mean, how can you really be sure? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way. Some people are. Some people are like, this is what I do. This is what they end up doing, and they do that for forever. I was thinking, I was kind of thinking of other things. You're going through puberty. You're thinking about girls. You're thinking about all these other things that. So I think it just kind of happened to work out. I feel so. I would say I'm lucky in that regard.
yeah, no, definitely. Same here. Luckily, if honestly, if they didn't have that skill set, skill center or whatever we want to call it for back in high school, I don't know if I would have been in engineering. So, as they say, God works his ways. But I guess starting your own business. So what problems were you trying to like solve when you founded it in 2015?
Yeah. So I feel like well, here I'll kind of back up and give a little backstory. Um, after after I graduated college, I suddenly felt like I had a lot more free time. In college, I was always studying and like almost every single hour was like
Trying to get through
studying.
your classes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
trying
what you
trying to
mean.
get a degree. So and so like that was my main focus. But like once I graduated, obviously a lot of that stress kind of came off. Now working in the professional world, um, I felt like I had a lot more free time in the evenings. So like after work, I've always kind of been like industrious. So I felt like I needed to stay productive in some way and keep learning outside of my job, which obviously was learning there quite a bit as well, but doing something for myself. And so during college, I did take several like software engineering classes, and I really enjoyed them. So in my free time, I started building applications like apps for phone. Um, so when I founded Denovo, it was actually while I still was working at that first job at Greenlee in Rockford, Illinois. And I started it because I needed an entity to publish my app I had developed. So that was kind of like the starting point. So it wasn't with the mentality of like starting a business. It was just like let me create an entity to publish my app. And but I think I eventually started kind of getting that entrepreneur itch, and I felt like it just got big enough where I couldn't ignore it. So, that's when I had made that decision to leave my career at that tier one supplier, um, and went all in my business. So, uh, for most of the time since, we've been focused on helping manufacturers and I would say operationally complex businesses modernize the way they run their business.
It's very interesting. So, um, how should I put this? you I was expecting you to say you identified a gap in the market, but you were kind of like, yeah, just like, hey, just I developed this, and there we go, and just
Yeah,
kind of let it bloom from there. And yeah, I kind of did the same thing, to be honest with you. With my business first started as Verdusco Consulting, but really my background's automation, so I'm like, it makes sense for me to change the name. Plus, we're not just a consulting company; it's not a one man show. We got team behind me. But yeah, I guess on my side of the fence, my main reason why my wife and I bought a house, and at that time we had some issues with the floor joist. It was all molded. It was like within the first 6 months of us owning the house. So at the time, I was like, okay, I need to make some extra cash to help fund this.
yeah.
So that's the whole reason why I jumped into it. And and finally about 2021, I decided to get serious with this and move forward. But one of the things I want to ask, you do the custom manufacturing software, and I guess if you don't mind asking, who are your ideal clients in that space?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start what manufacturing software even means. So uh, in short, you know, what we do is we build software systems that help manufacturers modernize their operation. So that could mean, streamline workflows, eliminating manual processes, um, automating things that slow their team down. And also creating things that puts them at a competitive advantage. So I'll give you some examples. And these are examples of things that we've actually worked on. So one example is something as straightforward as just taking like a paper-based dispatch operation and replacing that with a mobile application that lets drivers document damages like in the field, capture like signatures from customers, and creating a workflow that automatically like notifies the team when like certain stages of the operation are complete. Like that's one example. It Another example is we created this sales analytics dashboard for a manufacturer out of Ohio actually. um and this dashboard gave the team like the necessary visibility to like understand what's happening in their business on the sales side. So they were able to understand which variables are actually driving sales. So then leadership can make just smarter decisions, instead of just reacting to things in their
Into the
operation.
situation.
Yeah. So, those are a couple examples. And another thing that we've also done is in terms of modernizing is creating what's called microservices. I don't know if you've heard of that terminology, but it's just software lingo. But essentially, what it does is um, you unlock modern capabilities on top of older infrastructure in this situation. So you could think of it as like, let's say like a chef, right? A chef, um, he or she is not involved or doesn't do all the parts of the meal, like,
Prep work for
right,
the meal.
or the dessert, or the other parts. You have like a specialized person for the dessert, specialized person for the appetizer, and so on. So those specialized um people are, you can see those as like microservices. So in this case, a microservice, we created technology to handle one part of their operation really well with modern technology, even though they had like legacy systems. So that's one way that companies now that have like built, let's say, their own in-house tools, and and don't really want to go through a migration, but they do want to, let's say, implement something that's going to help out their business.
Then make some improvements.
Yeah, exactly. And then you could create a bunch of microservices as well. So, and I guess one last example is, something like an inventory app that's built right directly into like a Zebra scanner, one of these. Um, and that allows them to completely streamline their whole cycle counting process instead of going back and forth, and you know having a bunch of errors, it essentially eliminates that whole the whole friction of that process.
Nice. So I know you pretty much answered this, but I'm going to ask this question
Yeah,
anyways, just for the audience.
yeah,
So what you guys building is different from like an off the shelf ERP system?
yeah. That's a very good question. And I think there's a lot to it, right? So I think off the shelf tools. If you're a business and you find a good off the shelf tool that works well for you and the budget's good, then do that. Because if that's you don't need to do anything else. What really differentiates us from off the shelf is that our tools are always exactly what you need for your business, right? There's no um uh you know what's the term, you don't leave anything behind. You're paying for what you needed to do. So and off the shelf might be able to do like maybe up to maybe 80% of what you needed to do. But our software is for your specific business. And going back, you asked the question about the ideal client, and all these clients tend to be pretty similar. And they're usually running key workflows on spreadsheets, emails, paper, tribal knowledge, just a whole lot of manual processes, and they usually know that it's costing them. Sometimes they do the calculations and they know like the actual numbers, but um, they're never really told that they have a problem. They just feel it on a day to day. They feel it in their when they're doing things. They're like, oh, you know, re-entering all this information and spending a lot of time. So they feel it, especially when they start growing. I think that's when like that pain starts really. You start really feeling that pain, and so the they typically have an ERP system already in place. Our customers aren't usually looking to rip that whole thing out. They just need software that works with the ERP and fills the gaps that the ERP was never like designed to do. The ERP is a good uh, source of records. I guess it's a record system, right? But when it comes to like their operation, you need very specific type of tools uh, function with your operation. Um, a lot of teams have field. Some of these teams that we work with have field teams or shop floor teams, obviously, and operational crews that perhaps they have like used off the shelf tools before, but for the most part, it just has failed them, and that's because the tools were just too generic. It was just a generic tool and not specific to their operation.
Yep. You know, I guess you say I've done work in both applications as an excuse me, like more of a standard process versus a custom design one. And excuse me, I remember like one of the companies I worked for in the past, they, you know, how should I put this? It was the way it was explained to me in the West, and probably showing my age again. Because my wife one time she goes, "What do you do? Like, what's the difference?"
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Larry, look, you buy a VCR like Zenith back in the day." Again, showing my age, but you know, you buy a VCR or a DVD player, or I guess now a TV. There's like standard stuff to it, and that's it. And let's say you want this to do, I don't know, have it to where it goes up and down, like you wanted to adjust its height or whatever. I'm just talking out loud, doesn't mean it's going to do that. Television does that right now. And so I'm like, you know, we'll give you, a VCR the way you want it. Like, tell us what you want. And that's essentially what you're alluding to is that I'm these are my pain points in this operation, and you're like, tell me what you need, and you're there to solve it. That's what your application does. I guess layman's terms.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing that I think our clients see value in is that the fact that you know I founded the company. I'm from manufacturing, so they don't have to explain to me like how a manufacturing plant
Process
works.
works. Yeah.
Um, Obviously each manufacturing process, like each business is different, right? But in general, like they don't have to explain some of these things that are just standard in manufacturing. So I think they they see value in that, and I think they usually want more. You know, they want more of a partner when they kind of engage in these type of things. They want someone that understands the operation as well as understanding how to build like enterprise quality software. So I feel like a lot of these guys that I've talked to, they've been burned before, like vendors that have sold them things that just doesn't deliver. And now with AI, there's just a whole new wave of products that they're being sold. So I think in the end, the reason companies work with us is pretty simple. They know we know manufacturing, we deliver enterprise quality software, and we can get to version one, and get that in their hands quickly at a price that makes sense. We're not the cheapest, but we're when working
Again,
with
what
us.
is again what you're paid for.
Yeah, yeah,
It's gonna work.
exactly, and they get deep domain knowledge. I think that's a big thing, and real technical expertise, and also I think n- none of the extra overhead that comes from like a big consulting firm. And I feel like I believe in the lean principles. I feel like I kind of apply that in my own way of operating, but also in terms of how we produce products, for our clients. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. I'm glad you brought up AI because so, that was kind of leading to my next question as in where do you see the manufacturing industry heading and what's changing right now that you're like, "Oh man," or you're like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot, man. I've been doing kind of this world tour, and I say world tour, but really means like Michigan and Illinois area, here in the Midwest, attending like conferences and seminars, and seeing you know what's how manufacturing is changing, trends, and all that. So I feel like I have pretty fresh like insight of what's happening at the moment. Um, and I'll speak to like my industry, my world, in how that applies to manufacturing. I think for the longest time, you know, manufacturers would get sold all these like, or if they had like this problem, they're like, okay, go buy this tool, right, or this software or whatever. And that's what they did, and still do to this point. But with that comes, heavy licensing fees year after year. Maybe perhaps painful implementation, and a lot of times, at least from what I've gathered, um, they end up with something that never quite fits their business, how their business actually operates. And I think sometimes that's just kind of like a disconnect on what maybe one thinks what the ERP is supposed to do. Again, ERP is a system of records, so when it comes to the operation side, I think it lacks a lot. I think there's a lot of gaps, and that's kind of where we live in, filling those gaps. And with off the shelf, I feel like there's a lot of compromise. So, you know, right now, I feel like some of the changes is that with AI, we can now build enterprise level software systems tailored to their business at a cost that I feel is pretty competitive to some of these traditional tools. So I feel like the math has shifted a bit. Um, and I think people are asking like, why am I paying these like insane licensing fees for uh, something that's like 80% of what you needed, when you can own something that's exactly what you need. Uh, so that's one thing. But I think on top of that, when talking about AI and automation, um, one thing is that manufacturers are very um, skeptical when it comes to like AI things. Although AI has been a thing for a long time, and you know, but after large language models have came out, I think things have shifted in terms of how businesses are working now. So I think what I'm seeing manufacturers doing right now is, instead of asking more of like, how can we automate this, they're starting to realize, like, or start asking more about the data that they have, and asking questions like, what data do we actually need to make better decisions in our company, and that's one thing. And then another trend that I'm seeing, and this, probably you've seen this maybe even more than me though, is that there's a workforce challenge, right? Like, labor shortages have been a big headache, and it continues to be a headache. And I think, I forget what statistic that I had saw, is that had seen, that's just going to keep growing. And I think with that problem is that companies are trying to make more out of working with fewer people, um, by being more effective with the tools and smarter systems. So I think that's a trend. That's kind of where we're going. So I think in the next 5-10 years, the companies that are going to win, the manufacturers that are going to win, are the ones that figure out how to get clean, actionable data out of their operation, so then they can beat their competitor.
Yep. Well, I guess from the statistics I've seen is basically the population growth is not growing in the United States, for example, and so I guess that's one of the issues or one of the areas that they're trying to address because they see it dwindling and then just having a hard time finding either the people or the right people. I know that's one of the things that everybody keeps talking about, at least online. Um,
Yeah, and I think also, like, on that note, is I feel like eh, for a long time, I think manufacturing has kind of had like this rep of like being kind of dungy and dirty.
yeah,
Um,
it's not that anymore. I mean, it
yeah,
used to be.
right, right. Sometimes you go to some places that's like, okay, you're still using the same process from like the '60s, and it's worked out. Okay, that's cool. And sometimes it is like, especially when you're doing like,
Well, speaking of that,
yeah,
we had a conversation. One company they're still
yeah,
using PLC2s.
yeah.
I don't know if you know what those are.
No, I don't know what those are.
It's like one of the very first PLCs ever was developed from Bradley. They use a terminal to be able to program it. So
Okay.
it's like don't even use a computer. It's a terminal.
Although, as a developer, I think, one can argue that that's like one of the best ways to develop. But, I think, in that case, if it's been working for them, then maybe they're thinking, why change it, Or maybe they went to you because it's not working for them anymore. I don't know.
Well, it's obsolete. It's
Yeah.
it's obsolete.
Yeah.
There's like if this goes down, then you need to bring stuff up to at least to the what today is, so you can keep your stuff going. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes some of the guys are just clinging on and hanging on and long as they can.
Hmm.
Out of curiosity, in your opinion, and maybe you brought this up, what in the manufacturer today, as in the struggling side of it, um, what do you feel that they're most struggling today? They're not really talking.
Um, well, we spoke about the workforce thing. I think sometimes also it's, some companies really focus on the continuous improvement efforts that they do in their company. So there's always innovation, there's always improvement, there's always, they're trying to innovate as their company grows, and they see it as a company, and I think sometimes there's a hesitance to like, invest on things that maybe, um it might not be their specialty. I feel like in my world, we do software. We live in the software world, and in manufacturing, it's not really like the main focus of what they do, right? They're focusing on creating their products, shipping on time, delivering, making their customers happy. Uh, so software tends to kind of be put on like on the you know what's it called on the sideline. Um, and I think overall, I feel like that's a big mistake because with some of the companies that we're working with, they're innovating like a startup, you know. So we're building some technology that is really getting them ahead and putting them in a position that to just obliterate their competitors that aren't doing any of this, you know. Um, some of these companies, especially like small to mid market, sometimes have or for the most part have one like IT manager or IT director, and that's about it. You know, you might have some supporting roles for certain things in IT, but like their IT does everything in their whole operation. So the IT person doesn't really have a whole lot of time, or really no time actually, to innovate and build products for their client. You know, so I think that's something that I see time and time again, especially with the clients that we work
Yeah,
with,
I
is
mean,
that
honestly, I'm in the same boat because, they, they want to, make automation. I call them continuous improvements, like adding cameras, adding a robot, improving cycle time. Um, you know, they may have an assembly line where they're, how should I put this? This HMI is on this version, this HMI is on this version, this HMI is on this version, this PLC is on this version, this PLC is on this version, and I guess need to make it all one so that way you're not using, like, for example, um I believe it's Siemens where you that's why kind of virtual machines became so popular because you could have it all in one PLC or PC to where if it's like you got version, I don't know, 14 over here, version 17 over here, you can't just downgrade. If you go up to with your regular computer, you have to create a virtual machine so you can talk to that one because you don't want to update it. And so, that becomes a problem with some of these plants. So, and maybe you need to or you want to upgrade it, but you just don't have the time, you don't have the personnel to be able to do it.
yeah.
That's where kind of where, I guess you say we come in and help out with that because that's a big problem. The longer you let it go because it's just everything keeps getting newer and newer, and you're still stuck in PLC2 land.
Yeah, yeah, and I think sometimes what happens too is like, let's say someone in that company decides, okay, we need s- we need to start looking into this. Maybe they read about it or saw something or saw another company was doing something that was really kind of having a competitive edge over them. Um, but you might that might be like level 3, and then you're still kind of working on level 1 type of situations, right? Level 1 is kind of getting the foundation of your company good enough to go to level 2 where you're automating things, and being able to implement certain type of automation within your business, and then going to level 3 being where, like, you know now you're talking about AI and then how you can implement that, but you can't get to that until you do the first two, getting your data right and be able to do, some automation that doesn't necessarily need like artificial intelligence. There's a lot of stuff that we've worked on is automation, but just automation in terms of how that data works with their workflow, not necessarily just pumping in AI just for the sake of it.
Yep, yep, exactly, exactly. Um, kind of, I guess you say, change on subjects on you. I know you've been obviously growing your business. You know, what's been kind of one of the biggest challenges for you as in scaling?
Um, I think for me, in my business owner perspective, I feel like the hardest thing has been like the positioning. Because in the early days when I went full on with my company, I really was just taking on almost any kind of projects. To be transparent, I was building games for people, consumer apps, SaaS tools, all kind of things, and I think that was fine. I think I felt I don't know if I would change anything per se. Well, there's a lot of things I would change, but I think in the end, building a portfolio was fundamental to even get to where we are now. And doing that helped, just keeping the lights on. And I think, but part of it was like it was kind of hard to explain exactly what we do and be able to do and build a repeatable business. I think that was like the biggest challenge in that early stage in the company. I think,
I think,
yeah,
oh, just to quickly interrupt,
sure.
sorry. So I'm curious. Have you ever read the book, The One Thing?
No.
It's I forgot who wrote it, but it's a great book. And I was kind of going through the same thing as what
Mm-hmm.
you were describing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, taking on different jobs, and so I had a friend, a good friend. He was like, "Hey, read this book, The One Thing," and it talks about all the different other business owners out there. Like for example, Steve Jobs. Obviously Steve Jobs is, built the Apple phone, and done tremendous a lot out there. But the one thing I got out of the book was that he just like they picked out like 10 things to focus on, and that's what they built. They said he would get offers from everywhere on all these different type of ideas, and he was like, nope, nope, you ignore the noise and just focus on those 10 things, and that was it. And so that's kind of what the book is about. It's just focus on this, ignore the noise, focus on this. You probably went through everything that the book just talked about. You just said, okay, I need to ignore this noise and just focus on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's like there's this I don't know, this pull to kind of like prevent you, like it's almost you feel like you're leaving things on the table when you're doing that. Um and I've read things like what you're talking about, and I haven't read that book that you mentioned, but a lot of these business consultants and coaches are saying like niche down, focus on, one thing, or focus on what positions you the best in what you do. And that took me a long time to kind of figure out like what exactly um how are we positioned to be the best, right? Like not only really good but the best at what we do. And when I kind of started going through that thought process, that's when I got to the point where it's like, okay, um, you know, I know manufacturing. I've worked in that world, um, and I know that there's, being in continuous improvement. I know the gaps. I realize the gaps within, like, let's say a warehouse or in a plant, but the gaps there's gaps everywhere, right? And as we started kind of like niching down, and we hadn't completely shifted to manufacturing, but we kind of started shifting to like just the industrial sector. So we were working with not only manufacturing but logistics, construction, and just warehouse operations. And that's when we're kind of like, okay, I think we're providing the best value here because of what we know, and kind of our background, and really our expertise. um and that's I think we realize that by trial and error type of situation. I think sometimes even if I read things doesn't click, until like you're like
A week
experiment
later.
yeah, until you're actually living it, and they're like, you know what, this is what we got to do. So I feel like there's no other
That's a great,
company.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, that's a great point. Oh, is it, and I'll give another example, and obviously, Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if you read any of his books.
No.
Um, but he breaks out, I think it was the most famous one, Rich Dad Poor Dad, where he talks about how um, you know, he got into real estate and he did it like his rich dad taught him to, without his own money. He bought some condo for like, I don't know, I guess it was like, obviously back in the day it was like probably about 10,000 or 15,000, and then he only made $25 a month off of it. That was it. And he goes, I didn't care how much money I made, I just wanted to learn the process. And so, kind of, I went through the same thing. I'm like, okay, I don't care how much money I make. I just want to learn this process.
Mhm.
I know this is the right thing to do. And essentially, I should say this, Andy, you did it. You did exactly that. You're like, I got to learn this process. So even though I don't make much money out of it, but I need to learn this process.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish I would have gotten there, um, you know, a little bit faster, and also without having to go through some of the, I've been in the trenches, like when you're building a business, there's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of things that you learn that of what not to do, and perhaps even decide on who your ideal client is to from maybe experiences that you're like, well, I think part of that process was part of that experience that maybe could have gone better was because maybe we just if only we were positioned better to help them, maybe we weren't the best person, even though we got through it, we finished, you know and I don't quit, right? So like, we've in the beginning, like when I was taking on projects, some of those I probably, it would have been better for them to work with someone else. But part of it was also us building our portfolio, meaning we definitely weren't charging a whole lot to build some of those products. But there was a lot to learn from there, and that's why I say like there's definitely things that if I were to redo it again, I would think that I would get to a fully operating business much faster than I did in this
Oh yeah.
first, you know.
If you had to do this all over again, you'd be like, you'll probably be like 5 years ahead of schedule, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I think it was like the gentleman who's, I can't remember the guy's first name, obviously. The gentleman who started a Ford Motor Company, they asked him that question, like, how long would it take you to build the company again if you did it from scratch? He was like 5 years,
Hmm.
and I guarantee you, probably like 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe even shorter, to be honest, but yeah, I think positioning, people talk about it, but it's probably one of the most important things that one should focus on when running a business.
Yep, yeah, 100% with you. Well, next question for you, I got is what emerging technologies for you excites you most about in the manufacturing space?
Um, I think I've been really into uh keeping up with the humanoid robots that have been coming
Really?
out. Yeah, I think that's pretty that excites me, I think
What
one because
Out of
of
curiosity, what excites you about the humanoid robots?
I feel like I think just the technology that goes into these is very inspiring, I would say, because you now you have physical world with the software world, um combining like the top of the physical to the top of the to software working together to um, essentially be this humanoid robot that could really do a lot of things. I think in the manufacturing world, I feel like and that this has already been happening where they're integrating them into operations. Like some of the OEMs have been doing that. But I think also it kind of excites me in the consumer level. I feel like I seen some demos. I think we're still a little far behind from what I would like to use a humanoid robot for, like using chores and doing dishes, stuff like that. Some of these tedious work, I would say would be nice to have like a helper that can always be helping me. Especially, as a homeowner, I'm doing things all the time. Like it doesn't stop. So if I had a little buddy that's doing it, other than my son, maybe my son's gonna be my next little buddy that helps me. But um, having something like that, I think is very cool. So robot, I think just the reusable rockets. I think I've been really into seeing how that has been developing with SpaceX and Blue Origin and these space companies. I think that's pretty neat. I mean, as an engineer, that's mind boggling, you know. And I know some engineers that work in some of these companies, and you know they're top, they're bright guys. So I see why like they're able to achieve these kind of things. Um, and I would say the last one, the last emerging technology is AI agents. I think that's the next. Uh, I think that is something that all businesses will be using very soon, or should be using very soon, or else will be left behind, including manufacturing.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Only thing that excites me, I was saying this jokingly, but the one I would have buyed is I don't ride motorcycle, but I guess Kawasaki is coming up with that four-legged animal one.
I saw that.
Now, if you ever feel want to give me a present, that's a great one for Christmas.
I saw the concepts of that. I mean, that's very interesting. I did see that, and I think perhaps maybe one day if I have the funds, I'll give you one, man. I'll give you one.
All right, that sounds like a plan. I don't think my wife would still be like, "You're not riding it." No.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for that foot, man.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, just for the audience to know, I hurt my ankle the other day, and I'm hobbling around a little bit, but I'm able to sit just fine. But no, just kind of Andy, we're gonna wrap things up. So for young engineers or entrepreneurs, mainly for entrepreneurs looking to start their own software company like yourself, what would be your best advice for them?
I'll say don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Um, I would say like in terms of, I'll speak in general, and like build, if they want to build a company in general, not necessarily only a software company. I think this applies to really anything. Is that, you know, I think it's good to work in the industry that you're interested in first. So let's say if you're coming out of college, maybe you got that entrepreneur itch just like me, but I feel like you would just expedite things so much better, and things would just go much better for your business if you know spend some time in that industry learning firsthand from people who've been working there for years, decades. You're able to, you know, ask the right questions with, you know, working alongside all these people, you know. So like for example, me working in manufacturing, you know, I learned some of these headaches. I learned, and I, you know, if I wanted to do this from the start, let's say if I just say right now, without working in manufacturing, I want to help manufacturers, you know, build some of these systems. I think it would be very hard to do it as effective as we do it now, just because of that knowledge is missing and that experience. So I guess to answer your question in short would be work in the industry, really learn from the best, and then take what you learn into what you want to build. And I think things will go much. It'll be a much better experience for those people.
Yeah, and I completely 100% agree with you. For myself, if I was trying to do this automation side of it without ever programming PLCs, HMIs, drives, I'll be lost. There's no friggin' way. And I hate to say it, some of the ideas maybe, use AI. No, 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 don't do that. But no, that's great advice. One of the things I would say, um, just to add it to your point, if there's areas of, what we don't know. I should put this. We know this as business owners, as in there's certain areas of running a business that you're not going to have knowledge of. Best way of doing it, or get that knowledge, or have an understanding of it, is read a book on that subject. I mean, that's really one of the best ways to gain that knowledge.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
And also, I did want to say, I know you mentioned a couple books, and I have not read those. I do read books, by the way. I just haven't read those. I
well, out of
started-
curiosity, what's your favorite one that you read when you were with your when you were trying? Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'll talk about recent. people that I've been really I've listened to three of his books. It's Alex Hermosi. Um, I think
Yeah,
we talked
a good
about it,
one.
right?
Yeah,
He's a gym guy, so he operates gyms, but now he operates a bunch of other things. So, um, some of I think he has like three or four books. I've read at least three of them. He's talking about business models or leads and stuff like that. I think that has been insightful overall. And I've read a bunch of other business books, and I'm not one to remember like the authors' names all the times, but I mainly read business related things and anything that kind of and that's how I kind of started learning about positioning. That's how I started learning about marketing, branding. Um, or personal brands even, so I've been working a little bit more on just being visible, being uh, you know out there for people to consume me, like through content. And So yeah, that's I think Alex Hermosi is some has some good books.
perfect, perfect. So my last question is, for anyone that wants to contact you, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I think, the best way is just find us at our website, denovostudios.com. You could also find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so I'm always open to connecting. Reach out to me through there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, everyone, again, this is Verdusco Talks Business. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and yeah, get a hold of Andy if you're looking for simulation software, custom ERP systems. He's definitely the man in that area. So, Andy, any last words?
No, well, thanks for having me, Raul, and I look forward to the next one.
All right, awesome, awesome. All right, guys, thank you, thank you.